What PID is? PID stands for pelvic inflammatory disease. PID is common in women if they have untreated chlamydia or gonorrhea. 40% of women suffer from PID.
It is a general infection of the womb, ovaries, and fallopian tubes. It can cause infertility.
Very often, women and their doctors don't realize that they have PID because the symptoms may be mild. In some cases, severe symptoms are pain in the lower abdomen, fever, an unusual discharge from your vagina with a bad smell, pain when you have intercourse, and bleeding between periods.
The proper way to avoid getting an STD is through abstinence and sterilization. Condoms can also reduce your risk of getting any type of STDs or PIDs. Washing your genitals, urinating, or douching after sex will not prevent any STIs.
Okay. So how old are you?
22.
22. Okay. 22. Do you know what PID is?
PID? No.
It's pelvic inflammatory disease. And
Oh, okay.
Do you have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what it does, kind of, sort of?
It's sexual infection.
Yeah, like from STD?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. 20. Do you know what PID is? Have you heard of PID? Okay, well, PID is a pelvic inflammatory disease. It comes from gonorrhea, and it just builds up. So, you never heard of it?
No.
Yes. Alright. So how old are you? 25. Do you know what PID is? PID. It's from an STD. It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. Have you ever heard of it? You've heard of it? Okay, awesome. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
So how old are you? Have you ever heard of PID? PID is a pelvic inflammatory disease, and it just it comes from an STI. Have you ever heard it from the doctors?
No.
So how old are you?
22.
22. Have you ever heard of PID? Pelvic inflammatory disease? Ever? Have you ever been to the doctors and heard about it?
No.
Okay, well, it comes from an STI, and it comes from gonorrhea. So that was it. We just needed to know if you've heard of it.
Oh, no.
Awesome. All right. And just answering 2 questions. Should be a little short. Ready? So how old are you?
23.
23. Have you ever heard of PID? It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. Have you ever seen it at a doctor's or anything? Do you know who it pertains to? Like what group?
Elderly people.
It pertains to women. It's pelvic inflammatory disease. So,
Alright.
so how old are you?
18.
18. How old are you?
20.
20.
20.
Okay. Have any of you guys heard of PID?
No.
It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. Have you ever seen it at your doctor or anything? Do you know what age group it affects, or like what group of people? Well, it affects you guys women from like a young age. So, yeah.
So right now,
Right now, yeah, that can happen to you. Yeah. It comes from gonorrhea. Yeah, I know that's crazy, but yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If you just don't mind speaking a little loud so the camera can hear. You ready?
Yeah.
Alright. So how old are you?
23.
23. Okay. Have you ever heard of PID?
No.
No? Have you ever seen any doctors? Any signs PID? No. It's a pelvic inflammatory disease, and do you know who it affects? Like what people it affects, what group of people? It affects women in your age. So.
Be careful. Yeah, there it is.
So how old are you?
23.
23. How old are you?
21.
Have you guys ever heard of PID?
PID?
PID? No. Okay. It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. Do you know who it affects most?
Teenagers? Or is it
Males?
Females, actually. Yeah, it's females. It's from untreated chlamydia or gonorrhea. So it affects women between the ages of 18 and 30.
It depends on what type of answers I get.
What is that? Okay. So how old are you?
20.
Have you ever heard of PID?
No.
Do you know who it affects?
No.
It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. It's from untreated gonorrhea. Have you ever heard about it at your doctor's? Seen posters or anything? Alright.
Uh-oh, what am I setting myself up for?
You're in first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Alright, so how old are you?
How do I look?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I won't be a
21.
Okay, I'm 21.
21?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever heard of PID?
No.
No?
No.
Have you seen that at your doctor's office? Any signs?
Oh, PID.
Yeah.
Was it pelvic?
You're on it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Pelvic inflammatory disease?
Yeah.
So you know who it affects?
Yeah. That's what you're asking me.
Ooh.
I'm a minority girl.
Okay. Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it affects women from like 20 to 30. Do you know what it consists of, like how it comes about?
Well, mostly through sexual intercourse and sexually transmitted disease, and unprotected sex, and it basically affects minorities, usually Latinas and African American women primarily.
What makes you say that minorities?
I don't want to say what makes me say. That's what statistics say.
Okay.
Usually because a lot of times they're having unprotected sex, or they're not being educated or educating themselves. It's kind of taboo. It's not something they usually talk about with their parents, or if it is in school or in class, they don't really give, the best courses on it, because sometimes teachers don't want to elaborate because they don't know how much they can say and how much they can't, because it's kind of an uncomfortable topic. That's primarily why. And statistics. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, did I go around?
No. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is that what?
If we were just kind of speak a little more.
Oh, okay. What is it for? What is it for?
Site 52. Right here, we have a Dr. Baden. It's just 2 questions. You ready?
Yeah.
Alright, so how old are you? 20?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of PID? It's a pelvic inflammatory disease. Do you know who it affects? It affects women in like 20 to 30 age group. It's from untreated chlamydia.